Hi, my name is Chasta Musenda, and I want to thank you for listening to today's message. I hope this message challenges you to know Christ, experience community, and influence culture.
Good to be here. Good to be back at Seven City Church. We took a break while the church went through the tribulation in 2020 from coming here with all the COVID and everything else that happened. But we were here right before COVID, I think 2019, and it's great to be back. My wife Lori would have been here this morning, but she is with her mom. Her mom is 85 years old and suffering some health issues right now in the hospital. So Lori stayed home to be with her, but she sends her love. And Lori and I, anyone newly married here? Anyone newly married? Like 1 year, maybe 1 year, 2 years? Anyone about to get married? Thinking about it? All right, got a few. All right. Yeah, Lori and I, we're celebrating 10 years. We have 3 boys, 4 or one daughter, all in their 30s. And so I always give a tip to those that want to know, how to create and make a great marriage. So our vows included this, that I would make all the major decisions in our marriage, and then she would make all the minor decisions in our marriage. And it's worked out wonderfully. So far, we haven't had a major decision in 10 years, according to her. So, yeah, good tip there. All right. So you may ask what I do. I'll share a little bit of my story this morning. But for about the last 7-8 years, Lori and I have been helping men and women navigate out of infidelity and brokenness in marriages. I work specifically in counseling and coaching men out of pornography, out of sexual addiction. If you're not sure what sexual addiction is, basically sexual addiction in a nutshell is just somebody that is engaging in unwanted sexual behavior and feels like they can't stop. So unwanted, unhealthy, illicit, whatever you want to call it, destructive sexual behavior, and feels incapable of stopping that. So we're not talking about sexuality in marriage and all of that. We believe in that, yes. So, but we're talking about sexuality that can destroy us. And of course, it is in our culture. It is everywhere with both men and women. My focus specifically is men. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story this morning, and in keeping with our series, I've titled my message this morning. Maybe you've heard someone say this. The simple title is, "Who do you think you are?" You ever had someone say, "Who do you think you are?" But I'm going to say it in a different way. Who do you think you are? So we're going to talk about how our identity impacts and influences our sexuality and our behavior in that way. So I'm going to read a text. I want you to follow it on the screen. It's a beautiful text. Jesus quoted this actually when he proclaimed his mission in the synagogue. I think it's in Luke chapter 4, and this is how it goes. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me," Isaiah prophesies, "because the Lord has anointed me to bring the gospel," or the good news, "to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives, the opening of the prison to those that are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to grant those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the garment of praise instead of a faint spirit, and they will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified." Lord, thank you for your word. Let the word of the Lord speak to us today. God, I pray that you would strengthen us, encourage us, empower us to live for King Jesus. We thank you for it. Amen. I'm going to focus this morning on that verse, part of that verse where it says he gives beauty for ashes. Beauty for ashes. And so I'll begin with a story. It was about 2 years ago. I'm about to go to sleep. It's about 11 o'clock. Lori and I usually, as our custom is, we'll go to bed together around 8:39. We'll watch a show together. I get to watch my show about once a week, and then I watch her show 6 times a week. And so, anyways, we watch a show, we talk, we have a little bit of a laugh, and evening conversation, and she will usually, near the end of the show, like at about 10:30 or so, 10:30, she'll drift off to sleep. She always goes to sleep first. So whenever that happens, I'll hit power and I'll go to sleep after she is. And so I lie my head on my pillow that night, and as I'm lying my head sideways on my pillow, I'm looking at the window outside of our bedroom. And we're on the first floor, and as I look out, there's just a little bit of a crack in the blinds where I can see out into the yard, and I'm telling you the truth, I thought I saw a fire. And I'm looking, and I'm like, is that flames out in our yard at like 11:30 at night? And I'm kind of in, this dazed, almost asleep, and I don't know if it is or not. And so I start rationalizing and thinking about the fact there might be a fire in my backyard, and my brain goes like this. It goes, well, maybe it's not. Maybe my neighbor Josh is barbecuing at 11:30. Maybe I'm just seeing things. And then I look over at Lori, and I, you have to know Lori. The best way to describe Lori when it comes to things like this is she don't play. Like if she woke up in the morning and there was a fire and I didn't do anything about it, it'd be game over. Like it'd be all over. So I thought I better get up. Now, I am the kind of guy that gets things done, just not right away. So I overcame that procrastination, got up, walk out the back door onto the huge wood porch we have in our backyard, and lo and behold, there is a fire. And I cannot even understand why. I don't know where it came from, but it has come through our back fence, burning half of our fence down. It's going down the fence line, and then over on the left side, it's coming on our, at that time, really dead grass towards a wood patio. And it is so wide and so big, I don't know how to get it out. I mean, it was so high, I wasn't going to stomp it out. I didn't have any quick access to water. The fire department is at least 20 minutes from our house, which is out in the country, and I don't know what to do. So I did what any man would do. I got my iPhone out and I took a quick picture. I think we have that first picture. Yeah, that may or may not have been the picture. That may be another one that I found, because I may have lost the first picture, but it was pretty close to that. Big fire coming my direction, and I am freaking out. Fear is all over me. And so the only thing I know is I got to go to the water faucet and get a hose. So I run over, put a hose on. The water faucet's on the other side of the house. Finally get that over. It's not long enough. Get a second hose, attach it to that. It's still not long enough. Finally get a third hose, and it finally gets over where I can begin to squirt out this water. So I'm just spraying down this fire. It took me 20 minutes to get all the flames out, and I mean, it felt so good when I was done. I'd become what I've always wanted to be all the way through my life. I'd become a first responder. It felt so good. Any firemen in the house this morning? Any policemen in the house? No? All right, well, not a lot of hope for this crowd. We got no help at all. All right, any nurses? All right, we got some nurses. Oh, there we go. All right, we're good. So I go to bed. The fire's out. I don't even try to figure out what happened. I'm tired. Done a lot of work, so I go to bed. I get up in the morning. I tell Lori. We go out. We look at this lawn, and so there's a picture of the lawn. So it wasn't that big. I mean, it was pretty big, but you had to be there at night. It looked a lot bigger at night at 11, but you can yeah. You can see the trail kind of going back down the fence line there, and that trail goes back to a big wood fence, and it did actually burn through this big wood fence. So I kind of follow that trail over, and I go to the fence, and I realize that where it started, there was a bunch of metal that had been burnt to a crisp where it began, and there was an extension cord going back to my neighbor's house, Josh. So I called Josh, and he comes over, and we look. When he gets there, he just looks at this and goes, "Oh, no." He said, "Blaine, Jessica, my wife, bought a bunch of chicks, little chickens, baby chicks. And she was putting them outside, and they were by the fence there, and she was afraid they were going to get cold last night, so she put a little heating lamp. And it shorted. Obviously, it shorted out. Caused this awful fire. So I'm trying to feel bad for my house and my fence, and now he's got me feeling bad for 7 little chicks. And I want to tell you that every chick was saved. I really do. I'd like to tell you that, but it didn't happen. And so it was really quite sad. And so we just kind of had a little memorial for the chicks, and Josh and I rebuilt that fence and got it all fixed. And I thought back to the fact that even though that was small at the moment, it was making progress towards the porch, and it would have caught the whole house on fire. And I thought about the day that we're living in right now. Thought about the times that we're living in right now. And on some level, I have to believe that America is on fire. There is a fire that has started in this country, and especially over the last, I would say, 10 years. As Pastor Stephen bravely tackles the subject of politics next Sunday morning, we've never been more divided. It's never been more hostile. I don't think, at least in my generation, in my lifetime in America as it is right now. There's a really deep division in our country. And there's also, beyond the political divide, there's gender divide, there's racial divide. And there's, a lot of economic peril as well. For those of us that live in reasonable prosperity and able to pay our bills and so on, which, would be probably more of us than not, there are a lot of people that can't and don't and are struggling with poverty, children who don't have enough food in the cupboard every week. And so with all of this going on, and even I would say, the mental health crisis in America, where right now, there's a lot of talk about guns in America, and I know I'm in Texas, so I'm not going to say anything that's going to get anyone mad. I love guns. All right, my dad had plenty of them. I grew up in Canada. We shot deers and elks and bears, and trust me, if you see a bear in Canada, it's good to have a gun. So, in that respect, I'm a pro-gun guy. But you know what? The greatest danger in terms of a man today in America having a gun is killing himself, not somebody else. There are more men that die of suicide as a result of guns than homicide in America right now. And so we have all this stuff going on, and on some level, God wants to redeem this, and he wants to use his church. And some of you, let's move from national, talking about America, to personal. Some of you, some of us, have got a fire going on in our world. Maybe nobody even knows about it, but maybe you're in the middle of a divorce right now that just feels like it's burning your life to the ground. Maybe you've just come through divorce. Maybe you've got a betrayal of a friend in your life that has just left you and it's not been there for you. Maybe you have a son or daughter that has just gone off the rails and you don't know how they're going to make it, or maybe you've even lost a son or daughter. So many different things that can affect us and impact us in our culture today. And if you've ever felt like that, I just want you to know that you're not alone, that God has an answer for you. As we broach the subject of sexuality this morning, there's some of us that maybe that has impacted us in a very severe, maybe even a very private level, where you've had to navigate some pain and some trauma, some brokenness in that area. Maybe boundaries have been crossed in your life, or maybe you feel shame because of the boundaries you've crossed. Or maybe you've had just a hidden secret addiction and compulsion in this area that maybe you've never shared, and you just go to bed every night just feeling awful about the struggle that you have. Well, I can tell you I relate. Because 15 years ago, because of my decisions in terms of my own sexual behavior, 15 years ago, my life literally burned to the ground, friends. Everything about my life was gone. I say it like this, that, I'm not going to tell the whole story this morning, but I write in my book, Death by a Thousand Lies. I say it like this: by God's terrifying grace, all of my past was exposed. And it was grace because it had to, and it was God's grace that He gave me this opportunity to finally figure out how to get free from this. But it was terrifying in that because I just wouldn't confess and wouldn't seek help for so many years, that finally He had to pull back the curtain and say, I'm going to help you confess. I'm going to help to expose this for the good of yourself and your family. And I'd lived in this world, this awful world, for 23 years. It started in 1988 when I was 28 years old. Friends, I'd never looked at pornography in my life. It'd never been a thing for me. I grew up in the 70s. Anyone 70s kids, all right? Couple, yeah, right? So in the 70s, there was no access to pornography. I mean, here's the only way you'd see that kind of stuff in the 70s is if your dad had like one of those dirty magazines, in the drawer in his dresser or under his bed or something like that. And a few of my friends had fathers that they found, but my dad didn't, and I know because I looked everywhere. My dad was clean. And so I never looked at it. Never had access to it. So I go all the way through my teen years, all the way through my 20s. I'm 28, and I'm in a hotel room. I'm alone. I'm exhausted from just a weekend of speaking and counseling and doing all kinds of stuff. And I had made some really horrible spiritual, emotional health decisions in my life for the last several years. I had no rest in my life, no Sabbath. I was gone every weekend, away from my wife and my family a lot, and I'd made bad decisions in the name of preaching the gospel, in the name of working hard, and frankly, a lot of it out of my own ego to chase success. And so I'm sitting on the end of a bed, exhausted one night, and I see this white box on top of the television with a red button. And I knew what it was. I'd seen a lot of white boxes in a lot of hotel rooms. I knew what it was. I didn't know what it would look like. And I'd resisted the temptation to hit that red button 100 times. But at 28, in this moment, on that night, for whatever reason, it was like my resistance was futile. And I just got up and I hit that, and on came all these images. And I felt a dual competing emotion of incredible shame that I was viewing this, but also this exhilaration of, wow, never seen anything like this. And after about 10 minutes, I shut it off, and I made, on that evening and in my life, the worst decision that I've ever made in that moment. And the decision I made was to go down to the front desk, catch the attention of the clerk, and say, I want to pay for the movie that I just watched. Why did I want to pay for the movie? Because I didn't want my host church, who was paying for the room, to see that on the bill. And it was the beginning, friends, of what I would not have expected would be a 23-year cover-up of a secret, shameful sin that I could not quit. I could not stop. And like lust does in so many areas of our life, it never gets satisfied. It never plateaus. Lust will take you somewhere, and then it'll say, I want more. And then it'll take you there to say, no, I want more. How many know you can't open a bag of Oreo cookies and you can't eat one, right? You taste one and you want more. Then you've done a row, and then you're repenting and asking God to forgive you. So in 23 years, it moved from a pornography exploration to a habit to an addiction to a stronghold, until eventually, as I document pretty good detail in my book, how it destroyed my marriage, how I destroyed my marriage. And I began to act outside of my marriage. And when God graciously exposed it in 2009, I lost everything. And I might add, deservedly so. I resigned the church I was pastoring. I quit the ministry. I fully planned to just spend the rest of my life doing whatever, selling cars or